So, when you think of Socrates, what comes to mind? Probably some wise old guy in a toga, right? Well, forget that picture. Today, we're not talking about Socrates the teacher. We're talking about Socrates, the threat. We're going to look at how one man, armed with nothing but questions, became so dangerous that an entire democracy voted to kill him. This is a wild story. I mean, really think about that. Can a democracy execute someone just for asking questions? It sounds insane, doesn't it? But that is exactly what happened back in 399 BC. And that, right there, is the huge question at the heart of this whole explainer. Can a society that's supposedly built on freedom decide that some ideas are just too dangerous to even exist? All right, so to really get why Athens would kill its most famous philosopher, you have to understand the city itself. And here's the thing. It wasn't this confident, golden age city you see in movies. No, this was a city that was basically one big exposed nerve. It was shattered, paranoid, and just terrified. And the speed of this collapse is just shocking. Try to wrap your head around this. In just a couple of years, Athens loses a brutal, decades-long war. Its empire's gone, its walls are literally torn down. Then a vicious regime, backed by their enemies, the Spartans, takes over and starts this reign of terror. We're talking 1,500 citizens executed, so when democracy finally comes back, it's not some triumphant return, it's crawling back, haunted and humiliated, and desperate to find someone to blame. So you can imagine, right? When a society feels like it's completely falling apart, the last thing it wants is nuance. It craves stability, it wants simple answers, unity, and it definitely doesn't want some guy wandering around poking holes in every single thing people are trying to cling to. In a city this fragile, asking too many questions starts to sound a whole lot like treason. And that, of course, brings us to Socrates. He didn't carry a sword, he didn't command an army, but he had a weapon that was way more unsettling to the powers that be in Athens. The simple question, why? He basically turned a normal conversation into a form of intellectual combat. Yeah, we call it the Socratic method today, and it sounds all academic and proper, but the Greeks had another word for it, the elenchus. And trust me, it wasn't a friendly chat over coffee. It was a weapon. Its entire point was to take something you thought you knew for sure, and then systematically, piece by piece, demolish it right in front of everybody until you were left with nothing. It was designed to literally destroy your certainty. And this is exactly how he made so many powerful enemies. You see, he didn't pick on nobodies. He went straight for the top. He'd find a general and ask him to define courage, or a politician and ask him to define justice. And he would just keep asking questions until they were tied in logical knots, until they hit this state of total confusion the Greeks called aporia, a dead end. He made the most powerful, respected leaders in the city look like complete fools. And the worst part? He did it in public, for everyone to see. Okay, so this is probably his most famous line, right? The unexamined life is not worth living. But if you put yourself in the shoes of someone in that traumatized Athens, this isn't some inspiring quote on a poster. It's a declaration of war. He's basically saying that the quiet, stable life that everyone was so desperate for after years of chaos wasn't just wrong, it was completely worthless. I mean, what a direct challenge to the entire social order. And here's where it gets really bad for Socrates. For the average Athenian, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical debate. No, they believed they were seeing the horrifying real-world results of his teachings in the actions of his most famous students. Just think about this for a second from an Athenian's point of view. The two men who did the most damage to their city were both from Socrates' inner circle. You have Alcibiades, this brilliant, charismatic general who turned traitor and helped Sparta absolutely crush Athens. And then you have Critias, the cruelest of the 30 tyrants who led that bloody reign of terror. To the people of Athens, this was not a coincidence. This was a pattern. Yeah, so the city came to this chilling conclusion. His philosophy of questioning everything, gods, tradition, democracy itself, it wasn't just some intellectual game. It was a poison. They believed it stripped away a person's morality and created these brilliant, charming monsters who thought they were above the law. So with this cloud of fear and suspicion hanging right over his head, Socrates was finally put on trial. But let's be clear, this was never about a real search for justice. This was a political show trial. It was an act of revenge by a democracy that was terrified of its own shadow. Okay, so the official charges were impiety, not believing in the city's gods, and corrupting the youth. They sound almost quaint today, don't they? But underneath them were these deep, raw fears. Impiety really meant you're attacking the cultural glue that's barely holding our broken city together. And corrupting the youth? That was a direct finger point at Alcibiades and Critias. It meant you are the one creating the monsters that nearly destroyed us. And yet, look at this. The vote was shockingly close. You had a jury of 501 citizens, and they were deeply, profoundly torn. 280 voted guilty, sure, but 221 voted innocent. This was not a landslide. Athens was literally at war with itself over what this man and his ideas really represented. In fact, the margin was razor thin. If just 30 jurors, 30, had voted the other way, Socrates would have walked free. 30 votes. That's all that stood between him being acquitted and getting a death sentence. He could have saved himself right then and there. But he didn't. See, after being found guilty, he was asked to propose his own punishment. This was his chance. He could have shown some remorse, maybe suggested exile, but instead, he doubled down. He got up and argued that he was a gift to the city, a gadfly sent by the gods to keep it on its toes. And so, for his punishment, he proposed a reward: free meals for life at public expense, an honor that was usually reserved for Olympic heroes. Can you believe the nerve? You can just imagine the absolute fury in that courtroom. This act of what they saw as supreme arrogance was the last straw. The second vote, the one on what the penalty should be, wasn't close at all. A lot of the same people who had just voted to acquit him now voted to execute him. He had essentially dared them to kill him, and so they did. So why? Why are we still talking about this one execution from 2,400 years ago? Because the threat that Socrates represented, it never went away. His death exposed this permanent, dangerous conflict that lies at the heart of any society. Let's just look at that divided jury one more time. That 56%. They chose security over questioning. They chose comfort over truth. But the really terrifying part is that it was a democratic majority decision. Democracy itself chose to silence its most challenging voice. It was a choice, and man, was it a close one. And with this one sentence from his trial, he just lays it all bare. He reveals exactly why he was so dangerous. He says he will obey God rather than them. He is declaring his ultimate loyalty, and it's not to the state, not to the jury, not to the will of the majority. It's to his own conscience, his inner divine sign. And let me tell you, an individual who believes they answer to an authority higher than the state, well, that is the most dangerous person imaginable to any power structure. When you boil it all down, Socrates wasn't killed because he was wrong. He was killed because he was corrosive. He dissolved the certainties that societies are built on. And the lesson from his execution it's a chilling one. Pursuing the truth isn't always this noble act that leads to enlightenment and makes everything better. Sometimes it's an act of demolition, and it can get you killed. And that just leaves us with this final nagging question, doesn't it? Who's really more dangerous? The one man who refuses to stop asking why, or a society that is so afraid of the answers that it chooses to silence him forever? The trial of Socrates ended in 399 BC, but that question is still on trial today.